Welcome to this lesson on Chaarmi low-code and MiniScript for the metaverse. Let's dive right in. First, let's begin by searching for free 3D model websites that have GLB files. Using a simple Google search, we can see Sketchfab, Free3D, and CG Trader have come up. We will use Sketchfab to find a simple model of a 3D environment we would like to use. This one seems good. It's a nice open-world style model that gives a fun vibe. Notice that the polygon count is a good amount, not too high and not too low, at under 400,000 polygons. Let's go ahead and download it and make sure to copy the attribution text. Make sure to remove the quotes from the attribution, as that will cause problems in Chaarmi. Let's now go ahead and upload the file, and let's begin by importing it into Chaarmi. You can go ahead and use any skybox you like. Now, let's go ahead and scale and size the model up so it matches the scene. Save the scene. Now at this point, we need to set the scene up so that its lowest point is where the grid at the bottom is. The grid at the bottom is the lowest point where the player will not fall. In order to simulate falling, we need to put objects higher than this point. So let's go ahead and position the model that way. To select and deselect objects, you would use the Control key and left mouse click to select and add objects to a selection. You would use Shift and left mouse click or drag the mouse to remove objects from selection. Sometimes it's hard to grab just one object, so using a combination of select and deselect, you can select the starting spawn player dummy. Now we want to move the player's starting spawn point to the top of the imported model. However, if the model takes too long to load, the player will fall down. To counter this, we will create a cube object like this and then reposition it at the top for the player to stand on. Cubes load faster than GLB files, as they are already built in and do not need to be loaded at runtime like GLB files. Now, as we position this cube, let's change its texture U and V coordinates to make it tile 10 by 10, so it looks more full. We can now grab our player's spawn dummy and move it up above the cube we just made. Let's go ahead and test it out in the front end. You should see as we move around, if we fall down into one of the lower points, we can't get out. For that, we will need local jumps or teleports. Back in the plot, hit the 1 key to get basic objects and create a cube. We will use this as a local jump trigger. Let's name it Teleport Pad 1 and then save and apply changes. Now, let's go over the interaction types. There is None, which is default and does nothing. OnClick is used by a mouse or VR controller to click on this object. Trigger Enter is used when the player enters this object, and Trigger Exit is when a player leaves the object. This all happens in 3-dimensional space. After that, we have None Do Once and None Loop. Both of these will run the code without requiring any type of interaction. The None Do Once will run only one time, whereas the None Loop will repeat the code infinitely looping. For our local teleport jump, we will use a Trigger Enter interaction type. Now, save and apply changes, and let's move and scale the object, and let's go ahead and position it, and let's give it a red color. Now let's open up the properties and click on the little question mark, and click on the Chaarmi MiniScript Functions button. From here, go down and copy the local jump code, and then let's close those windows and paste it into the code section of the properties view. From here, let's replace the sObjectName variable with pad1 in quotes, and then hit Save and Apply Changes button and close the window. Now let's create another cube where we want our player to teleport to. Let's call this Teleport Pad Pad1. Let's now open up the Chaarmi functions list, and let's find the Remove Collider function, which will remove the collision detection on this cube. This way, when a player teleports here, they won't get stuck. Let's paste the code in, and let's replace the object with Pad1, and let's change the interaction type to None Do Once. Let's then save and apply the changes, and then let's exit the properties and resize and move the pad to the location we want our player to teleport to. Let's now open the properties and hide the visuals by changing the color to #FFFFFFF00. And then let's save the scene, and let's go test the teleport out. Let's enter the experience and run towards the red teleport pad, and we should teleport. Great job! Let's move on to some of the next features and functionalities. Now let's go over creating a viewer camera. Go ahead and open the basic objects, and let's place a viewer camera into the scene. Next, we need a screen or object we can show the camera view on. Go ahead and create a cube object, and let's place it in the scene, and open the properties, and let's call this screen 1. Save and apply changes, and then move the cube, and then let's go to the camera, and in the code section, simply type in the name of the object, in this case, screen 1. When you hit save and apply, you will now see everything the camera sees right on the object. You can now position and size this object and remember to save your scene. Our next item is the audio object and playing custom audio. Chaarmi comes with several types of custom audio functions, including 50 built-in sound effects. Let's go ahead and start by placing a purple audio object into our scene, and let's move it to a place that is out of sight for players, but easily findable in the editor mode. Next, let's find a sound on pixabay.com, which has royalty-free audio and sounds for you to use. Once you find a sound you like, download it and upload it to your server. Copy the link and keep it for the next steps. In the backend, let's go to the teleport pad and let's research the code for playing audio in the Chaarmi code documentation. We will be using the play audio function. So go ahead and copy this code and let's go and paste it in. For object, simply enter this specific object and then enter the MP3 file from your content folder. For looping, put false, and then for volume, put 1.0 and save the changes. Let's now test this in the front end. So go ahead and in the front end experience, run into the teleport pad, and when you teleport, you should hear the sound effect as well. Now you'll notice that if you try to enter a trigger again too fast, it won't work. Triggers take approximately 1 to 2 seconds to reset to protect users from an infinite loop of commands that would crash your metaverse galaxy. Next, we will dive into ambient audio zones. Let's hit the number 3 on the keyboard and add in an ambient sound object next to the audio object in the scene. An ambient audio zone is a great way to have various sound effects or music in different areas of your experience. This could be used when coming close to a body of water to hear the sounds of ocean waves, for example, or coming near a fire and hearing the crackling of the embers. Let's add a body of water in the scene by hitting the 1 key and then placing the body of water in the scene. Size and scale it to any size you want. Now let's add a cube into the scene and use this as our ambient sound location. The center of the object is where the 3D sound will be the loudest, and then the distance you put is how far the player has to go before the sound is completely silent. Hit the tab key and in the properties, let's set the color to transparent and green by using hashtag, followed by 00FF0000. Let's rename this object Ambient1, and then let's find the Chaarmi code for ambient audio. Copy the play ambient audio code, and then let's paste that into the code section. Set the object name to Ambient1. If you haven't already, download and obtain an MP3 sound effect at pixabay.com for ocean waves and then upload it to your server. Now let's go back and paste the MP3 URL into the code and add the quotes. For looping, put false, and then for distance, let's put 10.0, which will give a 10-unit distance for the sound, which will get louder in the middle of the zone and more lower in volume as we move away. Let's set the loudest volume to 1.0, and then set the interaction type to trigger, enter, and save, and apply changes. Now, let's save the scene and test it out in the front end. Go ahead and run towards the center of the ambient sound, and you should now hear the sound. Try moving around, and you should hear the volume adjust in 3D. Excellent. Now let's move on to plot password gating. Go ahead and add the plot password object, and let's position it in the scene. A plot password is a great way to protect a plot from the general public and only allow those with the password to enter. To set up a password, simply open the properties and type in any password you would like to use. In this example, let's use the word test and then save it and save the plot scene. And let's go to the front end to see the password gate in action. As you can see, the plot is now locked, and if you enter a wrong password, it won't work. But entering the right password will allow users to enter the plot. Next, let's add in an admin object. Go ahead and click on the admin object and position it in the scene. An admin object allows you to control admin users, as well as scene ambient lighting and camera clipping, which is useful when a scene is large and there are too many polygons. Copy the admin object code from the Chaarmi documentation, and let's paste it into the admin object. Let's go ahead and delete the admin users, and simply enter admin for the admin user. Let's increase the lighting to the RGB values of 220, 220, 220, and then let's set the clip range to 1000 so that we can see everything. Save and apply changes, and now you can see a brighter, more vibrant scene in the front-end experience. Now let's work on some of the basic Chaarmi commands that we can do on a trigger enter. Go ahead and create a cube in the plot. Let's now make the cube control itself so that it moves when the player runs through it. Create a cube, and let's call it Cube A. From here, let's look at the Chaarmi code items, and let's use move object code. Set Cube A as the object, and set FX, FY, and FZ accordingly. Finally, make sure to set the interaction type as trigger enter. Let's save and apply changes and save the scene. Now, let's go ahead and hit the Ctrl and D button to duplicate the object. Let's rename this to Cube B, and then let's copy the Chaarmi code to rotate object. Set the S object name to Cube B, and then enter the corresponding FX, FY, and FZ information, and make sure trigger enter is set, and let's save and duplicate again. This time, let's name the cube to Cube C, and then copy the code for scale, and use Cube C this time as the object, and enter in the information and make sure it's trigger enter. Now save the entire plot and let's test this out. As you can see, the objects move, rotate, and scale accordingly. Next, let's add an open URL command to one of the cubes. Go back into the plot editor and add in the code for open URL. Make sure to use a full URL HTTPS address for this to work. Go ahead and save the object, and then save the plot, and let's test this out. As you can see, when the player runs into the cube, a URL opens in a new window. This is great on desktops and laptops, but not recommended for VR. Now let's head over to playing videos. Simply select a cube object, and then let's name the cube anything, for example, vidscreen final. Now let's get the code to play video and enter in all the information, including a URL to the MP4 video from your content folder. Now let's set the interaction type to none, do once, and then hit the save and apply changes button to see the video playing. Please note that if you do not set the looping option to true, the video will only play once. Let's go ahead and save and apply changes. And there you have it. Our video is now playing correctly. In Chaarmi, we can also create a message box that works only on PC and Mac systems, not in VR. Go ahead and choose an object, and let's get the command to show a message box. Set a message title and the message itself inside the script. Now, let's make sure that the object color is transparent using hashtag FFFFFF00. Let's also set the interaction type to trigger enter. From there, let's save the object and save the scene, and let's test it out. As you can see, when we run through the object, the message box is shown. Another important item that you will use often is animating GLB files. First, find a GLB on Sketchfab or other site that has animation track. Go ahead and download the model and copy the credits, and then upload it to your content folder. After that, import it into your world, and let's move and position it. Now open up the properties and let's get the code to animate the GLB from the Chaarmi function list. Set the object name, and then set the animation index to 1, and then set the play mode to loop, and finally set the speed to 1.0. At this point, let's set the interaction type as none, do once, and then save and close. The object should now be successfully animating. Next, let's create an NPC avatar or character to help guide the player with various answers. go ahead and download a model you would like to use as your NPC. Then, do the usual by uploading the model to the content folder and then bringing it into Chaarmi. Once it is in, position it, and then let's go ahead and add a new cube object to the scene that will act as the NPC target for our messages. Position this object within the NPC avatar, as this is where the messaging will be showing from. You can adjust this object in the future to adjust the messaging text. Now go ahead and let's edit it, and let's name this object NPC target, and then let's set it to a transparent color so that the player cannot see it, and let's save and add another cube into the scene. Let's position it as a trigger so that when a player enters it, it will fire off the randomized NPC message. Let's now open the properties and name it NPC code, and then get the code for NPCs and paste it in. For the object, let's use the NPC target as the object, and for offset, let's use around 2.0, and then let's enter a show time of 3 seconds, followed by 5 unique messages, which we will show random, and we will use one of the 50 built-in sounds. Let's try sound 9, and then let's leave the next item empty, and finally set the turn to player option to false. And let's now test this out. There is so much more that can be done with MiniScript and Chaarmi. You can even use AI and ChatGPT to help you code. We recommend you download the PDF files and then upload these files into ChatGPT, and then get ChatGPT to help you code additional functionalities, such as moving platforms and objects or moving triggers that can teleport players somewhere else. Congratulations on completing this training. Your imagination is the only limit. What amazing Chaarmi worlds will you create?